Good morning, Mike. How are you today, man?
Good morning, Matthew. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. As always, you're always a welcome guest, man. Appreciate you greatly for coming on today. Hopefully, we can answer some questions or give some people some information they're looking for on the merger rumors or official rumors, I guess now.
Right? Yeah, we get this is such a secretive process. I find it so amazing how they've done. The only people that know the real details behind this merger is like Russ Brandon, Jerry Cardinell, Kevin LaForce, Eric Shanks, Moose Johnston. There's only a select few members or people up the ladder on both sides that know the full details, and then you've got coaches, players, GMs, personnel people reaching out to people like me to ask if I know anything about it. They're in the dark. I find it fascinating. I just got a message a few seconds ago before I hopped on with you, was someone who's in on the USFL side of things asking me if I've heard anything new. So it's been that kind of thing, constant phone tag, messaging, emails, all that, where people are still trying to get a handle on what's about to go down, maybe. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, just the actual, we got the rumor. The rumor was official, what, 3 days ago, 4 days ago now? We were
Yes.
waiting for a good probably week and a half for that official statement, and we finally got it from owners, individuals, just people in the league. So I'm glad that acknowledgement finally came, so we didn't all look like we were crazy.
Right. And what's crazy about the whole thing, the last run I did when this first came out, about them in talks, merger, close, imminent, as like some outlets reported. Um, I kind of like, I got a little bit of trouble because I had some sources within both leagues that gave me information and I relayed it. I didn't say it was concrete or anything like that. But the people who gave me that information were upset that I didn't confirm it, report it as 100% accurate. Because, like I said, like I mentioned in the open here, the only people that know the real full details are Russ Brandon, Jerry Cardinell, Kevin LaForce, Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, Eric Shanks, a few select people on the Fox side of things, lawyers, because in order for this merger to go down, they had to submit paperwork basically to get regulatory approval, which is kind of fascinating with this whole thing, Matthew, because I think everyone's seeing this merger as a foregone conclusion. People are trying to figure out whether or not it'll be a 2024 thing or a 2025 thing because of the time frame, calendar, short amount of time to set everything up. But I think people are a little too dismissive of the possibility that this might not go down. So,
Yeah.
in the press releases by both the USFL and the XFL, there was cautionary statements in there, and the cautionary statements were like, "This is pending approval." Now, I've talked to people on the sports business side, trying to figure out, okay, how will this go through? Is this going to be just a formality, or could there be some hiccups along the way here? And I know a lot of conspiracy theorists out there talking about government shutdowns and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, that being a potential hurdle. But I think there are some hurdles here. I think there is a potential of this not being approved. I know there's the people I've spoken to in the sports business field, and trust me, like this is not my wheelhouse. There are a lot of things in life that are not my wheelhouse. Uh, lawyer stuff, legal stuff, that's not my wheelhouse. But I've been reaching out to experts in the field to try to get a better understanding of things. And there's some people that have told me that this could take 30 to 60 days, which I know there are a lot of people out there don't want to wait 2 months for, to find out what the next step is here. And so I got a little bit of trouble because I got information from people on the USFL side and XFL side who, told me in the beginning, fewer teams, likely hubs, and potentially a new league name that kind of encompasses is kind of the umbrella above these two leagues. In the meantime and in between time, you've got a lot of fans right now that are giving their opinions on this, and so
Yeah.
there's potential for backlash here. The hurdles is eliminating hundreds of jobs.
Yep.
So
Yep.
in this potential merger, so I think both leagues have carefully come out and said, "Hey, we're ready to do 2024 on our own," and they both come out and said this might not, because if you read the wording, right, it's like pending this, just in case it doesn't go down. So the USFL has to operate with, they don't get started till April on the field. they have to operate under the assumption that, we're just going to be the same 8-team league. We're going to do what we do. The XFL has to do the same thing. So that's why they've countless showcases. They got 3 more coming up on the 7th, 21st, 22nd. Their draft, they never, even though during their documentary, Mark Lillibridge came out and talked about an October 4th draft, that was never set, was never publicly announced by the XFL. And so if they're going to have a draft for their own league, it'll be in November, likely. There's supplemental drafts to follow. Yeah, there's supplemental drafts to follow as well. But here's the kicker to this whole thing. If you're doing USFL in 2024, and these teams are going to be in one league, then you're going to have to reshape how your draft takes place. When it, are the Stallions in the same draft as the Defenders, that kind of thing. So both leagues are business as usual. It's been like that the whole offseason. The XFL had a bunch of rights claims on players, the Tavon Austins, all that. Guys are coming back. There are guys in the NFL right now. The XFL had, I believe now it's up to 68 players that were signed by NFL teams. The USFL had 41. There are a lot of people behind the scenes that hope that the calendar stays in February because players feel like they have a better chance to go to the NFL if they're in that situation. And I think Neil Stratton had an article with former NFL personnel person who said that the preference is for these leagues to finish up in May rather than July. And then I think we saw this year with the XFL having more signings, 27 more, that timeline works out for players to get an opportunity to at least sign and get a chance to get in camps and all that. So how this all lands is fascinating, and the digging continues. At some point, we could get information. This could leak. Maybe on the lawyer side, somebody up the ladder lets it slip out. Maybe, Zucker or one of these people talks to Axios or something and says, here you go. Here's some of the details we're going to be running with if this is approved. They can't really everyone in these leagues in the XFL and the USFL are like the people that are GMs, directors of player personnel, all those guys. They're on a need to know basis. So you can't really tell people. Like Russ Brandon had a letter that he sent out to staff members and football ops people and all that, where it's like, for now, your contracts are good, kind of basically that I'm translating. Understood. Because if all of a sudden there's no Vegas, there's a couple of other teams, maybe there's only 6 XFL teams part of this merger, and you're talking about a lot of jobs, a lot of people that are not going to be paid by the league anymore. So you got to figure that all out. Then there's the hiccup of one side having a CBA and the other side not. How do you work that in a merged league? How do you figure that part of it out? So, that's kind of the story there. So there's a lot of right now. It's not the answers people want to hear because people want to hear, like, okay, cool. You announced your intent to merge. You can't announce yet that you are merging, and you can't give details of it because what if this gets shot down or it doesn't pass regulatory approval? So it's kind of everybody's in limbo here. The players, coaches, personnel, they're unsure. I know USFL is having free agency. It's kind of an interesting agency because it's like all the players, with the exception of a few guys like a Mark Thompson or here or there, it's all the players that the USFL teams don't want to re-sign for a third year, and they're available. So like if you have a bunch of guys, the stars said, hey, we had you for 2 years. We're not interested in you anymore. And that's what's going on. Those 8 USFL teams have a bunch of guys that they're not really clamoring to bring back. So just put those guys in a pool and see if any of the other teams are interested in them. So the league's allowing those guys to have that opportunity. You will know something is up if all of a sudden one of those or 2 of those or 3 of those free agents just happen to sign with an XFL team. That you can't rule it out if they're out of their contract. So that's just something that, because a lot of these players that are in this pool are players that were original 2-year USFL deals. And they had their option picked up for a second year, and those expired. So a lot of the re-signings that you see in the USFL are the guys that didn't get an opportunity in the NFL, that didn't latch on anywhere else. There were guys that at the end of the USFL in year 1 that jumped ship to the XFL, good number of players, a lot of them, dozens. And there's some guys that ended up back in the USFL in year 2, like Scooby Wright, who tried to get into the XFL in 2023, but couldn't. So for whatever reason, Scooby's a very good player. But for whatever reason, the teams weren't interested in him, so he ended up going back to the USFL in 2023. So we'll see how this all shakes out if these two leagues are now one league when the smoke settles.
Understood. Now, let me ask you this: in terms of the official, business as usual. I mean, I've seen a lot of USFL transactions. I see a lot of people getting picked up, dropped, whatever. XFL, it seems like I think the last official transaction. Let me see. I've got it right here. Was we had two releases in late September, but the last actual rights acquired was the 5th of September. Is that a sign to be worried at all that the XFL's not doing any kind of transactions or moving of rights or anything? And plus, I mean, a lot of people honed into that doc, and we covered it on the show, of course, because I mean it was getting blew up online. That October 4th draft, we never heard officially about it, but everyone was saying it was happening. That got canceled or moved. So I mean that
Moved
it
it,
makes
and
sense.
it was never determined. There was
Exactly.
talk of potentially having, but the XFL never once went on their website or said, "Hey, get ready, October 4th, big draft." And that's the thing, the draft, right? Because once the XFL season ended, we've actually had trades during. It's crazy because the season ended in May. We actually had a couple of trades after the season ended. We had a bunch of transactions or players' rights being picked up,
Yep.
claimed. The Tavon Austin's kind of guys. Um, Chris Odom, a guy who's claimed by the Orlando Guardians. We'll see if he chooses to play in the USFL or the XFL. That's kind of an interesting thing. If they're the same league, they're the same league. But the Orlando Guardians claimed his rights. Was recently with the Browns, USFL Defensive Player of the Year with the Houston Gamblers. After the XFL season ended, there was all the right stuff, the rookie
Yep.
draft. There was player trades between teams. There were players that were released and picked up and all that. And then things kind of got quiet there because the initial idea for the league and the lifeblood of the league is really the XFL drafts that are coming up, because that's why you had the combine. That's why you have the multiple showcases. I'm losing track now. There's 3 more that have been added. The last one is a specialist showcase, which was the same thing they did last year. That's
Yep.
where you get the Daniel Whalen types who are in the NFL now for the Packers. So that came right out of Nick Novak's showcase. So the big lifeblood of the XFL, they did a rookie draft, the big lifeblood, and then we saw some familiar names that were taken in the USFL's rookie draft, ending up on the XFL side. But the big lifeblood of the XFL 2024 and beyond is their draft that consists of NFL cuts. And so the guys who were cut in training camp at the end of the preseason, mind you. So that's where their next pool of players comes from. It's similar to what happened last year, the Abram Smiths and all that. And the supplemental drafts are kind of like those players on the fence that are still waiting for NFL opportunity that don't get it in October, November, and December, that decide, okay, I'll give the XFL a shot because I didn't get a call on a practice squad. I didn't get an opportunity. Also, what the XFL did last year is they added a lot of players right before and during training camp that were players that ended the season on NFL teams on practice squads. So you had the Ferret Gardners and the Liam Ryans, and I think it was over 24 guys that finished the season on NFL rosters that ended up, hey, let me go play in the XFL. And they ended up going right back to the NFL. So I think that's a big part of it. There's no rush with it, but it does make you wonder, do these two leagues plan on doing a draft together? Because the USFL had to do, the USFL had to do a large draft to start things off back in 2022. You get to the point where you got to draft 70 players. They borrowed the XFL model, did the position drafts, all that. That's what the XFL did back in 2020. They had position drafts, so assignments, quarterback assignments, all this. So I think you have to figure out if there is a merge. And it's hard for me to believe. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that there's going to be an on-field merger in 2024. But I think that's what the general public wants. Like when you make an announcement and intent to merge, they don't want to hear, hey, we're just going to plug each other's games for a while and we'll see you in a year. They want you to get on the field. So the devil, Greg Parks, tremendous writer in this space. Pat Ruffino, another great guy in this space who wasn't able to join us today. But Greg wrote a great article about the devil in the details, and that's where we are. The fan in me, because you can see I got my Jets hat on, so I'm a lifelong Jets fan. I don't have any allegiance to these leagues. I'm not. This is no disrespect to anybody who's working in these leagues. I love the fact that these leagues exist, but I don't have any fandom of these teams. I grew up a Generals fan, but until they get in the tri-state area, it's hard. I don't feel attached to them, and I love a lot of those players: Mike Riley, Darius Victor. A lot of the guys on that team, Shalom Luwani, A lot of these guys I have a lot of respect for, but I don't have a real fandom for these leagues. I don't have like a team that I root for. So I'm actually I root for the whole leagues. I root for them.
That's
They're like
common.
yeah.
You're like a lot of people, man. Seriously. I mean, that's a lot of us. I mean,
I'm not hiding my Jets fandom. It's I've been since I was 5 years old. I've been a Jets.
Especially after last night, huh?
Oh my goodness! So hey, they could lose for a million years in a row. I'm still gonna root for them. So that's kind of the story. They had a good showing. We're not gonna get into all that. Nobody wants to hear me talk about the New York Jets.
It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good game. Frank Steratore, horrible officiating. So anyway,
Yeah,
so on that holding call. Hey, listen, if you're gonna call the holding call, throw the flag immediately.
Don't not after the play.
Not do it and wait. Oops, it's an interception. Okay, now I'll throw it. That's no. That makes you look, for all the people who work on the NFL is rigged and all this kind of stuff. It looks a little shady. But anyhow, beyond that, devil in the details, right? So back to that. So the devil's in the details. As a fan of this concept, someone who's followed so many of these leagues over the years, I'm excited about the possibility of merger, but I'm all for it. You got my vote, but I know the details are key here. I know there's some people out there that are saying, hey, listen, if it's hubs, right? If it's 6 hubs, 7 hubs, you're just going to have to accept it. You're just going to have to eat it, right? It's better that than no league at all. I agree. That's like an analogy. Would you rather never eat or eat something? So, okay, I'll take the eat something. But in a perfect world, in my opinion, there's some, like I said, devil in the details. You don't want to jump the gun on this stuff. That Neil Stratton and all these people got information about hubs. I released information about fewer teams and all that, and the potential new league name. We saw the trademark there for National Spring Football League. We'll see where that goes. Or heads. One side had to. It doesn't matter who did it. One side had to. But that could be a telltale sign, a hint of things. But the devil's going to be in the details. How many teams survive? What cities come back? The hub, I get it. It's a necessary evil. The reason why we're in this spot, I think, the reason why both sides, because Redbird can knock on USFL's door and they can say, listen, get the hell out of here, bro. We like what we're doing. I'm sorry to hear you guys are having some issues or whatever. They could easily just hang up and not show interest. But the reason why the USFL is showing interest is because they're in the same boat here. Both of these leagues have financial models to survive. I know people who look at the XFL think, oh my God, they lost $60 million. When you talk to people within the industry, they go, only $60 million? So they think it's a lie, the $60 million, because that's nothing for a startup company. In these football leagues, they cost $200-300 million to operate. The XFL and USFL, I know the USFL's cost was $125 million for 2022. And the XFL, both these leagues went and hired investment firms to raise capital. This is documented. The USFL is trying to raise anywhere from 150 to 200 million. The XFL was looking to raise 125 million this is what they do. The capital part is raising capital. So the XFL is looking to raise $125 million just to operate the 2023 season. So that people don't realize how expensive these leagues are. So both these leagues have figured out a way to be fiscally responsible. Like the XFL has a hub. They put teams together to travel together. They save money through travel with their arrangements in Texas, tax breaks, everything else. And the USFL obviously has figured out a way to save money. They're very bare bones when it comes to promotional efforts and all that. So both these leagues are at this table and looking to merge together because they're in familiar and similar positions. They're not making a lot of money. They're not hitting revenue markers that they want to. You look at the revenue markers like beyond everything, right? You look at the USFL, the XFL, you think about, okay, advertisers, sponsorships, maybe, but you talk about merchandise, ticket sales. You look at the USFL, it's embarrassing. Their ticket sales are embarrassing. It's awful. They make no money whatsoever. And it's not through, they've priced tickets that are very low, family friendly, just trying desperately to get people to come to their games, to show up. And they can't do it. They've been around for 2 years and they can't get fans to show up. It's a small selection of fans. You got games where it's in the hundreds. I don't even release the numbers because I don't want to make these leagues look bad. I had official attendance figures 138 paid. I'm not going there. That's not good. So I'm not going, and they're disappointed about it. And they came out themselves and said they were disappointed about it. Even disappointed in attendance, like Birmingham. They've been there for 2 years and they can't engender that or get that market to embrace them fully. You know, you would think by now that market would embrace them, you know, and show up to the games, not have it get free spatulas to get in, buy one ticket, get 4 free, you know? So, you know, so that's basically the case with these two leagues are in a position that one side didn't close the door in the face of the other side, say, oh yeah, well, I'm sorry, we're not interested, because they're both in similar positions. They both also see they want to thrive. So Redbird is used to, they're all about partnerships. You know, they manage assets, I don't know, $8 billion or whatever it is. They're all about partnerships. They partner with the Yankees, they partner with the NFL, Dallas Cowboys, Major League Baseball, Liverpool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their whole history is about partnerships. So I'm not surprised they try to strike up a partnership with the CFL, and they're trying to strike up a partnership with the USFL. That's their MO. And I think Kevin LaForce, the people that are in charge over there at Redbird, Jerry Cardinal, obviously, they see the potential here of the two merged leagues joining forces and it being greater than what they currently have individually separately. The XFL is financially prepared to have a 2024, 2025, 2026 season. Redbird is in this. They have the funding. They have all that. Redbird is in this to win. They want to hit a grand slam. They're not interested in just getting on base. Fox is disappointed. Year 2 was a disappointment for them. Their ratings went down. They still had major issues with attendance. Their TV product, it's clean. It looks good. I love Joe Klatt. Love their broadcast. But because you have no game atmosphere with no fans in attendance, because you have home teams that don't play in their markets, you don't have the natural home and road thing. Their TV product hurts. Piped in fake crowd noise. The TV product hurts. They had an inferior TV product because no fans, no game atmosphere. It doesn't feel like a fully fledged natural football league, because, you know, it's like you got the Houston Gamblers that have never played in Houston. So it's like you know, they're on the road every game. So it's kind of like this. So both the leagues, I know we're fans of these leagues. We're advocates for these leagues. We want to see them succeed. We're happy they exist. There's thousands of people getting jobs because of this. This is awesome. But I think in order for them to thrive, the merger is the best bet. But the devil's going to be in the details. I think if DC is not included, if Audi Field is not included in this mix, I understand rent's high there, but that team sold out games. That team had legitimate revenue there. That is one of your best markets in all of spring football right now in the United States. DC and St. Louis are the two best markets. So in terms of fan engagement and, you know, obviously at the gate. So if you're eliminating Audi Field from this mix, penny wise, pound foolish. So like all of a sudden you think the beer snake and all that's going to mean something to DC fans. I understand the DC fans traveled to San Antonio for the championship game. That was awesome. Their team was in the game, right? So they would do that in a neutral site. But if you're going to put DC with St. Louis the whole time, I mean, St. Louis fans will show up to watch their Battlehawks, but you're going to lose. You're going to lose fans if you do that. You're going to alienate fans. You're not going to alienate Vipers fans. Unfortunately, there weren't enough of them. The Vegas thing was a disaster. You might alienate some Houston fans if you all of a sudden abandon the Roughnecks. And the term I keep hearing behind the scenes, and this is what we might see in the PR stuff, if this merger goes through, the term I keep hearing is that they're going to say these teams are on pause. Vipers are on pause. The Roughnecks are on pause. Whomever on the USFL side is on pause. Breakers or whomever. You're going to hear that pause thing, and it was used for the Tampa Bay Bandits, who are also on pause, rather than we're abandoning. The verbiage might be something like, hey, we're doing this for the greater good, for the long term, and in the future, we'll be looking to bring back X, Y, and Z. And so don't worry, Roughnecks fans, we'll be back. Don't worry, Vipers fans, we'll be back. So that's where we sit with all this. So I think that, like I said, devil's in the details. Once they pass regulatory approval, and then they can go ahead and let us know what their setup's going to be 2024, 2025. And so until then, we're just a lot of people within the leagues are out there speculating on what's going to come next. I've heard every different thing. Some people within the league, I spoke to one GM who thinks that it's better. You'll have a better football league if there's fewer teams. You'll have better spring pro football if there's fewer teams. They think it's diluted a little bit because you got 16 teams. So that's not what people want to hear, trust me. But I get that mindset too. If you only got 10 teams or 12 teams or 14 teams in this space, each roster could theoretically improve.
All right, let's go to the questions. I got some questions for you if that's cool.
Yeah,
I see some comments too. Let's just go ahead and roll into the comments, and I'll go into my spills of what I got. So we had I see XFL Mike G. That was the last combo though. Brett. Let's see. So let's go to this one. He said, Mike, are you saying DC won't have a hub?
That's the early word. I think it's ridiculous. You know, I've heard it from people. I've heard it from sources on both sides that DC, if there'll be 6 or 7 hubs, and that DC would not be included in it, which to me is foolish. I think the term I used on Twitter, I'm not much of a tweeting guy, I was supremely stupid. So I don't know that for 100%. That's why sometimes I'm hoping some of this fan stuff, and that these people will actually listen. I know that there's paperwork that's already been filed, and I don't know how much of that legal work has all the juicy details. But there might be some of it. But it might be some of it though, because when you're talking about in this space the potential elimination of jobs, that's something to consider in an approval process. Are you hurting the market by merging together? Are you hurting employment and all that? So I haven't nobody's come to me and said for 100%, Mike, DC's not going to be a part of this. But the hub sites I have heard, and Neil Stratton reported it as well. You know, the Birminghams, Memphis, Arlington. Obviously, the XFL has a sweet deal with Arlington. They got a lot of tax breaks. They got a cool hub setup. They save a lot of money. They're traveling, using Arlington as the point where they start traveling from. There's a lot of a big reason why they're there. So I haven't heard Audi Field as being part of any potential 6 or 7 hubs. I really hope that they are at this point, but is it possible that they're not? Yes.
Understood.
Is it possible that we don't see Audi Field? I think that's just ridiculous. It's really stupid. It's really stupid. Mind you, again, like some of the decisions by the leadership on both sides I've been very critical of. Like they went into the DC market, they purchased and it seemed like they weren't aware that the beer snake was a thing. Like in week 1, like, oh, wait a minute, you know. So like they should have known prior to even visit. Good morning.
Oh, hold on, Mike. We lost you for a second. Can you hear us?
Real like that. And so if
can you hear me? Mike, you cut out.
For seeing I guess you can't.
I sent him a message. Mike, can you hear me? You're cutting out, man. Let's see if we can get it addressed. I see you. You were just cutting in and out real bad in terms of voice. Oh, see, look, now I'm doing it. Weird. Must be StreamYard, man, because it's doing it to me as well.
All right, maybe
now
go Zoom. Okay, hopefully this
now
works.
I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So just repeat what you said if you don't mind, because it was all kind of
choppy. Sure. Audi Field should be a part of the XFL. I'm not a fan of the hubs. I understand them from an economic standpoint. I think they hurt your league more than help them. If Audi Field is not a part of this merged league, it's a foolish move. Both sides, from a leadership standpoint, have made questionable moves the last 2 years. I understand the financial aspect of it, but not being in Canton and not having a team named Ohio, stupid. Not knowing that the beer snake existed before you started the 2023 season. The Rock kind of admitted that. They didn't realize, like, when they bought the league in 2020, you got to do research. about the product you have and have an understanding of it. And so it would not shock me if Audi Field's not one of the places because of maybe venue issues with MLS, into upkeep of that field to accommodate DC United, all that would not shock me. It's probably one of the best venues for spring football. Anybody who's been there, not just how crazy and wild the fans are, but the way the field is constructed, the way the stands are constructed, it feels like you're on top of the field.
That's what I've
Um,
heard.
yeah, so it's a great viewing experience. It looks amazing on television. So it's to get rid of one of your best aspects. That's why the devil in the details part of this. It's like, okay, I'm all for a merger. It sounds like so much fun. But if you're eliminating the USFL brand or the XFL brand, stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
eliminating certain places, I can somewhat live with a hub for the time being, but that's what USFL fans have been doing for the last 2 years, waiting for the Stars to play in their market, waiting for the Generals to play in their market. Here we are headed into year 3. Any day now.
I agree. Now, I got another question from Brett before we move on, and I figured this was going to rile some people up, to be honest with you. What's the 6 hubs you're hearing? Who and where?
Birmingham, Arlington, Memphis, St. Louis, Houston, and one's escaping me at the moment. I think I just went through 5. I don't have them written down near me. I wish I did, but there's one more. It's escaping me at the moment. It's not DC. Let me see. I hate doing this during the middle of a damn show.
You're good, man. Let me try to help.
I apologize for this because I do have this in my notes. And I just haven't seen. I haven't seen DC yet mentioned. It just seems very foolish to me. But I like I said, honestly, considering some of the decisions they made, like going into Vegas.
Brett said Canton. Is that
Yeah,
one?
Detroit, Canton, St. Louis, Arlington, Memphis, and Birmingham. And then it's not positive that's been decided, but I heard those were good bets. So that's from one source. That would leave out some interesting spots there. We're talking about, I suppose if you do it this way, I suppose you could have theoretically here, based on those names I just gave you, those cities I just gave you, you could theoretically have a hub with 4 teams if you wanted. Still keep 16 teams if everybody's in Texas. If you're doing an Arlington, San Antonio, double Houston shot, all those teams in Arlington, if that's in Texas. I mean, so I suppose you could do that. Ford Field, there could be a little bit of a rent issue. The USFL, I know, has a 1 more year on their Birmingham deal. So that's kind of the story there. Canton's such a great site. It's such a tremendous choice. That setting is terrific. It's perfect for spring pro football. I love it. Just have a team called Ohio playing there if you're going to be there. St. Louis, I totally understand. This assumption, though, that all of a sudden, this didn't happen for other hubs. This assumption, though, that all of a sudden, Detroit fans who barely showed up for the Michigan Panthers are all of a sudden going to clamor for the Stars or whomever. Or this assumption that St. Louis, which is an unbelievable market, they're awesome, that Battlehawks fans are going to show up for a DC Gamblers game or something. Why? So I mean, so it's kind of the story there. So I get it. Hubs might be a necessary evil. I can live with a hub in Houston where it's like the Gamblers and Roughnecks playing together at Rice. That makes sense to me, right?
That'd be awesome.
That's cool. We noticed those names I mentioned. Alamo Dome could be out of it. Alamo Dome's another nice setting. I thought they had,
Super nice.
yeah, I thought, unfortunately, I don't think San Antonio and Orlando did as well as they did in the AAF. And so that's marketing, promotion, product awareness, team quality, all those things factored in, obviously. Those should have been better. They should have done better. Orlando, that's Danny Garcia's home. You'd figure, good weather during that February, March period. You'd figure at least somewhat better than, I guess, Northeast stuff.
Much
so
better.
So you'd figure that's an ideal location for it. So we'll see how this is handled. I mean, that's what I don't have it 100% confirmed that they're going to be strictly in hubs, but it does sound very, this might get me in trouble. Very Foxish. And Redbird too, because Redbird has been cutting corners too. It's kind of fascinating that Redbird has decided to at this point, have assistant coaches be seasonal employees. Now, that's not the case for their coordinators and the head coaches. The head coaches all have 2-year deals. The offensive and defensive coordinators have 2-year deals in the XFL.
Understood.
So that's being honored. But a lot of these assistant coaches have been told they're going to be let go and then brought back when training camp begins.
That's tough.
So, yeah, that's a tough one. So, but that's what the USFL does. They pay you when you're on the job. They don't pay you when you're not on the job. You show up for work, you punch in, good, cool, we'll pay you. That's a way of saving money. So that's why, when that report came out about the assistants, a lot of the wording in there was, hey, this is very USFL like, because this is what they do with their assistants. And then lo and behold, we got a merger. So I think might be borrowing a lot of their ideas, sharing a lot of this cost cutting kind of strategy that's going on. I just don't think you can survive. I don't think you can thrive. I don't think you're going to get markets to be interested in teams if they don't play in their actual cities and stadiums. I think your product on TV suffers if you've got teams that don't play in their markets. So
especially if you're moving those teams from their popular home markets. I mean, that's
and then eliminating teams here in this equation, no matter what wording you use, we're putting them on pause, doing all that. Oh, they'll be back later, we promise. If you do that, you're going to alienate those fans from watching the league. Well, Breakers fan might go, you know what? Screw the USFL. I hate this stupid merger. Why'd you take away my team? Roughnecks fan might go, I'm not watching the league. You just took away my team. I like the Houston Roughnecks. So why'd you do that for? So, you're going to risk losing fans you just already kind of had. They're committed to your product. So devil will be in the details.
So this is the next one that's big that people have been wondering about. Are we talking more XFL style hubs or the USFL style hubs? So are we talking we're going to stay in our hub market, play in our hub market, practice in our hub market? Or are we talking more XFL where it's a hybrid system where we play in the same markets, but we practice in different markets, and then we all kind of come together in a fruition of wonderfulness? I mean, what do you think about that? What are we looking at?
I think we're looking at it potentially here, assuming that we're going full hub for 2024, if that's the case. I mean, they could say we're going to do this hub thing in 2024, and then in 2025, everybody's going in their markets kind of thing. But I think we get a little bit of a hybrid. Theoretically, you could have a full training camp. Let's say the merger takes place on field in 2024, which I'm still having a hard time believing. But let's just assume that that's the case, right? You could have a training camp with 12 or 14 teams all in Arlington, for example, and then you go out to your cities once the season starts, and then you're in your hub. Birmingham's in their hub with whomever, the St. Louis is in their hub with the Defenders or whoever it is. So you could, whoever's in Canton, you could theoretically do it that way as the season goes on. That's what happens there to save on travel. You could have everybody in Arlington, all the teams. And then just everybody travels together. They practice during the week in Arlington, and then everybody travels together to their home sites for their games. So that could be the case. I would figure if they're trying to save money that, because a lot of the reason why they don't do like mini camps and training facilities and people's teams setting up shop in their own cities, because the XFL kind of like they barely dipped their toes in the water in the markets.
Yeah.
They just showed up. They just showed up for the games. They did some local stuff, right? I'm not saying no. There was some local stuff along the way, but
it's far and few between, to be honest.
Yeah, far and few between. So it's not like the 2020 version where they were like in Seattle, had headquarters in there, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, like you could see a hybrid of the two. If we're going hubs, it's basically bottom line, it's all about saving money.
Yeah.
But I think you hurt your product.
No doubt. And piss off some fans.
I'm crazy. I'm crazy. Like I've done with all these. I watch every USFL game 2 to 3 times. That's how I do my write-ups on all USFL teams. That's how I do my recaps, my previews, all that. So I'm crazy. I'm going to watch all these games no matter what. I watched TSL when they had no fans in the stands and they had to cut their season short because it was a COVID outbreak and everything else. So, I mean, Brian Scott was MVP. So I'm into these leagues. I'm going to watch it. I'm the diehard. But you casual fans, you're not. And then you're not going to, engender yourself. You're not going to win over these markets that might have an interest in your leagues if you're not playing in their cities. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, once people hear this is going to be big, and you know that. I mean, that's, as you say, for someone like you who's kind of watching from the outside, you're there for the support. But I think of these super fans. Like I had Ball Hawk 1 on last week. It's like, now we know St. Louis is probably
St. Louis
good,
is not going anywhere. St. Louis is not
for
going anywhere.
example, if not, do you think he would support that market in DC? Probably not. Most likely not.
Who's got that money to do that? Like
Exactly.
who's I know it's only 5 Battlehawks home games. If you get into playoffs, it's 6. But that's kind of how the setup is right now. But who's got money to go and park and travel, bring your kids, bring your family, do all this stuff, pay whatever it is, $11 for a hot dog. So for like whatever it is. So I mean, nobody wants to do that. They'd rather watch the game at home. So maybe they'll check out the Defenders at home if they're playing, say, the Gamblers or something like that. But like nobody's gonna, they're not gonna put the same energy towards it. So if it's convenient and it saves you money, okay, I understand. That's what a lot of these things are. That's why these leagues are surviving, because they're using this financial model. Let's all travel together. Let's do a hub. Let's cut corners, seasonal employees. Let's go bare bones on marketing and promotion. Let's not spend money on advertising. These leagues are surviving because they're doing these things. But in terms of like thriving, and they're not going to do that unless they do the right things. And I think, to me, doing the right thing is having these teams in their cities. Until they get to that point, you're not a fully fledged football league if you're doing that. I'm sorry. The Generals don't matter. The Stars don't matter. These teams, they just do not matter. They do not register. Casual fans turn on the games and they hear fake piped in crowd noise and the announcers talking about how great the action is. And you look in the stands, you see nobody in there. So it's not, it's just, to me, it's penny wise business model, pound foolish, so we're having this merger right now, or these merger talks. Nobody slammed the door in each other's face because neither side hit a home run, and both sides don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I hate to be doom and gloom guy, but just the reality of it. I know I talk to both sides. I can play fan service here and say both leagues are the greatest, and it's the most amazing thing in the world, and and all that, and get a bunch of likes for saying it. But facts tell you otherwise. Ratings down, attendance down, head people in the league, Moose, ripping on his own league not being able to have better ratings and attendance publicly. So why did we have fewer ratings in the XFL? I don't understand. We had 26 games on network television. They had 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever it was. I don't understand. So, well, I understand, because your TV products and the football's fine. The announcing is fine. It looks nice.
It's very professional looking.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm a Joe Clack guy. I love him. So, love it. It's fine. But your TV product hurts because you have no game atmosphere. You don't have a genuine home and road thing. You don't have fans that care about these teams in their individual markets. There are some fans, pockets of them, but not really. Nobody's walking around New Orleans all day talking about what the Breakers going to do next season with McLeod Bethel Thompson.
No, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about much different things.
I mean, it's like I saw the other day, Mark Thompson, I think maybe might have been yesterday, and Jamar Smith were having like a Twitter war, like a social media war, like insulting each other and all that kind of stuff. And I know who they are. We know who they are. But I bet you, like, if a casual fan saw this, it looks like it's like 2 like fantasy league owners talking trash to each other. Like, they have no clue who these guys are. These are like 2 dynasty league owners that are bragging about, that they won. They started Puka Nakua. So like, to us, we know who they are, but they're like, there's the awareness is not really out there for these leagues. Like, there's the general public, the casual. That's the key with these leagues. Like, Redbird thought they would have more notoriety because they got The Rock involved and he's a big star. But just because you have The Rock involved doesn't mean something's going to be a hit. See Black Adam. So that's kind of the story there. And the USFL thought, hey, we're coming back for a year 2. We're promoting this league during the Super Bowl. This is free advertising. This is the greatest. We'll promote it during the entire NFL playoffs. We're going to keep promoting it for free. We got the networks. We can do it. We can do it. Ratings down. Can't crack 1 million viewers on network television. So, I mean, this is the bottom line. They were very disappointed. The Kentucky Derby, that was a great move. I think it was a Kentucky Derby, whatever it was, one of those horse racing things that everybody watches. That was an awesome lead-in. That ended up being the highest rated game for the USFL that season. But That was smart, brilliant strategy. But it didn't work out for anything else. So it was like, I don't think the whole world was like clamoring for let's go watch Todd Haley coach again. So I mean, that was kind of the story there. But so I don't see these leagues as failures. I think it's beautiful. I think
Evolution.
yeah, I think this is football heaven that we got these two leagues for however long it lasts, and maybe it's going to be one league. I want to see how this one league is constructed.
Makes sense. And in terms of staff changes, I know we talked about that a little bit, and I got a few questions on this, especially from my folks with the XFL Insider podcast. Like, basically, we're just wondering, is there any staff changes that we should be worried about? And I mean, of course, if we ask teams, we're asking their staff. I mean, I'm sure a few may be hired back, but I mean, it probably means you're gone. And as well as seasonal. If you're seasonal and they merge, I mean, that probably means you're gone too, right? I mean, in my mind.
Yeah. It's tough because that's why Russ Brandon, as he is addressing the troops, because now he's CEO and president. He was originally just president, CEO, so he's a big figure in this whole thing. That's why he can't tell these people, he's got to tell them it's status quo. Because he can't because what if the merger doesn't go through?
Exactly.
Then you're just moving forward with your 8 teams. You figured out Roughnecks play at Rice and you throw the Vipers somewhere. I heard Arizona State was the front runner with the Vipers, but we'll see. There might be if the merge thing goes through, we might have a whole different conglomeration here. So, but yes, as far as staff goes, yeah, there could be changes. Obviously, whatever teams don't make it, they're not going to add on staff like the USFL. I mean, to the XFL's credit, they try to have a fully fledged coaching staff with positional coaches and all that. But a lot of times in these leagues, what they do is there's multitasking involved. Like I know with the Generals covering them, like 5 or 6 different coaches take on a different role in coordinating that special teams. One coach will handle the return game. One coach will handle the field goal block team. One coach handles the punting and the kicking. So they're like, and meanwhile, that particular coach does a bunch of other things. And the XFL has that too. Ty Knott, who's a tremendous special teams coach. Seattle had the best special teams, I think, all in spring football this past year. He also coaches wide receivers. So he's coaching Jacob Pearson and stuff. So you got a lot of these coaches that they wear a lot of hats. So they do a lot of things. So, yeah, I don't know of any specifics right now, but if there's an elimination of team, there's going to be elimination of jobs, guys. And I don't see it being a situation where it's add-on, where it's like, hey, come on over, just join our staff.
Yeah, I don't see that either.
No, I don't.
That's not how business works typically.
Yeah, I don't see the expansion of staffs, unfortunately. As much as I would like to see as many coaches as possible get opportunities, I don't see that coming.
My question specifically from someone was Dr. Blevins. I mean, we made this huge, media uproar about him being hired. And I mean, it is a good thing. I think it's a great thing. But I mean, if his team's axed, most likely his position's axed as well. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. But I'd really like to see him on a team, regardless of where he ends up, just because of what he's done so far to get where he is. I mean, he gave up a job, right, to get where he's at now.
He had a standing NFL job, so he walked away. He walked away from the NFL. He wasn't on the verge of being fired or let go or his contract ran out. He left the job with the New York Giants. He was getting interviewed for special teams coordinator jobs around the league, and because this is an opportunity for him to be a head coach, it would be unfortunate if all of a sudden, hopefully he'll land on his feet and all that. But this is what he wanted. He left the NFL to be a head coach. So we'll see where the Vipers end up. It's whether they're still they're not going to be in Vegas, whether they still exist in 2024. So this is the tough business. I got to tell you, like this spring pro football stuff is a tough business. It is very costly, very expensive. I think Daniel Kaplan recently wrote a nice article about how people don't realize. I think I beat that point to death so many times, how expensive pro football leagues are. People think of them as like minor leagues and they don't understand how costly they are. So I get this cost cutting stuff, but it's that's why, in case this merger doesn't go down, Russ Brandon can't inform anybody on the XFL side, or Moose Johnson can't inform anybody on the USFL side what the plans are, because you can't tell them, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're only going to have 12 teams. And then all of a sudden the merger doesn't go through and they're back. Or you can't promise people, yeah, you're going to be fine. You'll be with us. And then the merger happens and there's fewer teams. So that's why a lot of the people are in the dark right now, because they can't tell them what's about to come. Maybe.
Makes sense. I mean, total sense. You're going to have staff jumping ship real quick, or really not having much respect for you as well in a position of management once you start saying, hey, things are changing, but we don't know how. But hey, we're going to change this right now. It makes sense. Now, the next statement, the next piece, I know you probably don't have a concrete answer for, but I just wanted to see if you had a timeline for future updates. Do you know anything that we should be looking at? Because this is the questions I'm receiving. I mean, we had a comment right here from an individual, Justin Miller. Do we have a timeline for finalizing the merger yet? I'm sick of the talk and speculation. And I'm right there
I'm
with
with
you,
you.
Justin.
I'm with
Yep.
you.
Yep.
I'm with you.
Same. I, I would
I feel
rather
the same way.
cover player interviews, news updates. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I would rather cover personally. So,
Well, I think at some point, this information, as closely guarded as it is, I think at some point we're going to hear details slowly start to leak. The way it works in these fields is very interesting. A lot of times, the information you get is directly from the leagues itself. Like they'll say, okay, off the record, don't mention me, but here's what we got. Here's what I've heard is proposed, what it's going to happen if this merger passes. Like for example, Jeff Zucker is buying into Front Office Sports, and Front Office Sports is one of the outlets that has had information about the XFL and the merger and all that. So if if all of a sudden Front Office Sports ends up having this story and the details, I will know exactly where that came from. They got, because Zucker's high up on Redbird. So, yeah, I'm tired of it too. Every day I'm digging. I don't want to curse on the show. A lot
no,
of
you're
people,
fine. You can cuss.
yeah, no one knows shit. So, it's like I said, it's really the tippy top of it. And I think the details haven't been released because what if this doesn't go down? How do you save face? Hey, but you guys are bringing back the Vipers, but you were going to get rid of them, that kind of thing. So,
No, this is a
yeah,
mess.
yeah. So both leagues are operating under the assumption, and that's why I'm having a hard, almost part of me thinks like they're better off doing something in 2025 than rushing into something right now.
Agreed.
So that's and like I said, fandom of this concept, not individual teams. I think what they should do, and I don't know if it's too late for that, if paperwork's already been filed and they're already pushing for whatever they want. Ideal world, the XFL still exists, the USFL still exists. You got a championship game they play at the same time. You got a championship game at the end of the rainbow, league versus league, whoever it ends up being, Battlehawk Stallions, probably Stallions again. And you'd have interconference games during the season.
Yes.
And then ideally, probably not realistic, 16 teams. They both play their league rules. They have a lot of similar league rules because they both borrowed from XFL 2020, the tier point conversions, everything else, timing rules, double forward pass. That's all XFL 2020 stuff. So you could still have your own league rules. Maybe when a USFL team plays a road game, they got to deal with the kickoff and all that. Maybe they adopt the kickoff for both leagues. I know the NFL is really interested in the XFL kickoff. There's a lot of people that are opponents of that kickoff. I understand that don't like it at all. I get it. Totally traditionalists don't like it. But the NFL's doesn't want to get rid of the kickoff. And so it's all about safety. It's not just the return, ensuring that our touchbacks. They want to get rid of the onside kick. They want to get rid of the kickoff because that's where most injuries happen. So they're looking for an alternative. Maybe they tweak the XFL one. Maybe they ask the XFL, hey, why don't you tweak it and try this instead? And so maybe that happens along the way here. But that's a perfect world. I'd have all 16 teams. I'd have the both leagues going at the same time. I'd have interconference games and a league championship at the end of the run. And so that's extending the season a little bit. That's maybe, and then depends when you do it, right? Because if you got 16 teams, all of a sudden you got 8 games a week. All of us, you got to figure out the schedule for that. Now you might not have just a 10-game schedule because now you've got 16 teams. If you're going to truly have interconference games, all of a sudden, let's say you start after the Super Bowl, now your season might run till June. If you're starting in April, now your season might run till August, which kind of hurts players' chances of getting NFL opportunities. So that's why the football side of this is important. Moose Johnson is a very, 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 very important figure of this. The likelihood is that he would be the football head of the merged league. He's the person with the most experience who's been a part of both leagues. He was part of the Alliance of American Football. He has close relationships with the people in the XFL office, with Bob Stoops, obviously worked with him in the Renegades, with Rush Giglio. They worked together dating back to the AF with San Antonio and everything else, XFL in 2020. So Moose, because the league, Russ Brandon, with all due respect to him, he's been a president in the NFL and all that. He's not really a football guy, kind of, sort of. So Moose has experience in this field. So it's likely that he's the guy overseeing all the football decisions, which makes for an interesting, where do you land with a lot of this stuff with the rules and everything else? So there's just so many layers to this. And yes, I'm tired of the damn rumors and speculation. I know you want me to come out here and just say, okay, here's what they're doing. Here's what I know. Boom, boom, boom. This is when the league starts. This is what they're doing. That's why I'm like, if they've got it figured out, business wise, I think they got to figure it out. They know how to do the model, but even that's complicated because how do you share profits? Who spends what? Again, so it's like, so it's very puzzling, this whole thing. And I don't blame people. It's scary to think the regulatory approval process might be 30 to 60 days. Nobody wants to freaking hear that. Nobody wants to be 60 days here still talking about whether the Vipers, maybe they'll go in Ohio. So, like crazy stuff like that. So, anyhow, but that's where we stand at the moment. It's unfortunate, but it's until this gets approved, and I don't think it's a given.
Now, let me ask you this. In terms of the actual approval, they have to have a concrete, detailed business plan and everything worked out transaction-wise before they can actually take that for that approval, correct? There is no working after that. Once you do that and it's approved, that's what you're rectifying, correct?
That's exactly right. That's why there's somebody in this legal field that knows a lot of the key details here. Besides the Kevin LaForces, the Jerry Cardinals, those guys, the Russ Brandons, that knows the full details of this merger. I miss, God rest his soul, Josh Davis. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or ran into him.
I did.
Yeah, Josh was very good at this legal stuff. So if he was a good resource for this stuff, he would unearth documents. So I kind of miss him in this space. So because maybe he would come up with something. Trust me, I'm digging people. Everybody wants me to get a hold of it. I think you gotta get an idea. I'm trying, but yeah, somewhere out there, Matthew, there's documentation that lists, because you're looking for approval in a marketplace. You gotta kind of give details. You can't write down on a piece of paper, we're gonna merge, and is it cool? Yes, or check yes or no. So you gotta have some legal documentation that kind of outlines what the plans of the merged entity entails.
Yes, sir. Makes sense. I just wanted to clarify it on air. People will argue about anything at this point online, so I try to stay out of it, but just state the facts.
All good.
The last thing I really have, Mike, and then we'll answer some fan questions if they got them. The TV time. What are we looking at? Is it going to be mostly Fox, or is Disney going to be involved also if the merger takes place? I mean, what I'm thinking, we're going to be looking at a lot of Fox primetime games in the companies within Fox, but truly, I don't know. What do you think?
In a perfect world, you'd have all these partners in together. The XFL has a rights deal with Disney through the 2027 season. So you would think that Redbird would see that as an asset. Now, working around this, how many teams you got in the league, how many games per week, trying to figure out when are you airing your games during the calendar. Those are key factors. You'd figure Fox here, NBC. I know NBC's deal, there's some worry there, but you'd figure in a perfect world that all these big time networks would be involved here.
Yeah, for sure.
Airing games. So there, I would, if Fox was absorbing this thing, if Fox was like, okay, Redbird, you want to check out, we'll just take over. We want the Battlehawks, we want the Defenders and all that, then we would know clearly. But if this is an equal merger, equal partnership, then both sides have assets in the game here, so the Redbird has assets. Well, not only the trademarks and all that, but they have a contract with Disney, with ESPN, ABC. So the whole point of doing this is you want to have as much exposure as possible. You want to be able to promote Fox games on ABC. You want to be able to promote ABC games on Fox, NBC, vice versa, all that. The more exposure, the better. That's one of the things that's killed a lot of leagues that try to make it in this space. They didn't have exposure. they struggled. The United Football League was on like Mark Cuban's HD channel, whatever, and they were struggling, So it's like they couldn't. They tried desperately to get a TV deal, to get something going on. FXFL was around. People barely remember that. The fall
I remember
experimental.
that.
Yeah, they tried to get. They were on locally in some markets, So it was tough for these leagues to get clearance. The Arena League had their boom when they were on NBC for a little while there, during the whole post Kurt Warner era and all that, where the arena was arena football was more trendy, and it's key. The exposure is key. So if you got ABC, ESPN, Fox, NBC all promoting your league, that's only going to help.
For sure.
That's only going to help. So you would figure if this is a 50-50 partnership, I expect all those networks that I mentioned to be involved. Just a question of how many games you're going to have per week. If you've got a 14-team league, then you got to figure out 7 games per week.
Understood. Makes sense. That, to me, the easier you make this to watch, the more successful you're going to be, and the more fans are going to get to come over. Once we got to start signing into apps or accessing different premium channels, that's when your numbers are dwindling. And we saw that in XFL. When they they played on ABC, exceptionally well ratings those days.
Yeah.
But others did not compare. I mean, some were bad compared to the ABC. So
yeah, I'm surprised sometimes they even got because they were the second highest rated show on FX. The XFL was, besides I think a show called Snowfall, and they were the second highest rated show on ESPN2. But those numbers pale in comparison. If you're on FX or whatever, and you got I was surprised they had a game with the Battlehawks that did 650,000 viewers. For FX, that's a lot.
Yeah,
there was USFL games on Fox with the Generals and the Panthers that only had 600,000 viewers. So if you're doing that if you're doing 650 on FX, that's halfway decent actually, all things considered. So anyhow, but yeah, the exposure is important. Where you're at, where you promote your games, all that. So I would assume if this is an equal partnership that you're going to see all the networks involved.
Gotcha. That's the smartest way to do this for sure. If you want to be successful, no doubt. All right, I think we'll answer some fan questions. I don't have any on the burner waiting on me. Guys, you got any questions at home? Brad, I see you watching. Mike G, Michael Lathrop, everyone on here. Any questions before we roll off the air? Mike, I appreciate you coming on in the middle of the day. This was my first day show, so appreciate you being the first day show guest.
Thanks. I was really excited about Pat being on.
Me too.
Yeah, really, because I want people to hear his voice in this space. He covers these leagues religiously, puts out a lot of content. Pat Ruffino's a very good follow for people out there. He covered the Battlehawks, did a lot of great interviews. AJ McCarron, Anthony Beck. He's a Michigan Panthers guy, loves the Panthers in the USFL. He's a huge advocate for the United States Football League. His opinion on this is fascinating because, there's some people that are not quite on board with a merger, that they'd rather the two leagues be separate and apart. You could say it's for having 16 teams and they're having more teams and more jobs, but also there's some people on either side of the fence that don't want to get married to the other side. They like their league the way it is. So, it would have been interesting to see Pat's take on a lot of this different stuff, maybe in the future with you there, Matthew.
Yeah, definitely hope to get him on. I was excited too because I've been wanting to talk to him since I started this thing. Kind of like you, big goal there to talk.
It's tough. It's tough coming on here because I know there's a little bit of pressure for hey, you got Mike Mitchell on. He's going to drop a bombshell. Bob Stoops is taking over the Stallions or whatever. Something crazy like that. People expect some major news, and I'm just like a lot of you guys. It's not that I'm not getting information. It's the information I'm getting is not solid enough to run with, and so I kind of questioning myself, or even though everyone else reported it after I did, that fewer teams, hubs, potential new league name that encompasses both, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of kicking myself and for even mentioning being the messenger, because typically I don't come through with anything until I know it's 100% confirmed. And the sources that gave me information were upset at me for not reporting it as solid 100%, because I told them bluntly that I know that there's only an inner circle that truly knows the details for 100%. Unless I crack that wall, maybe. But unless I crack that, well, now people are doing a lot of like sleuth stuff, I guess. Like they're trying to figure out if Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson are leaving because they're not getting responses on emails. Like those are the only emails Dwayne Johnson and Danny have. So they're the only ones that exist. They still got their old 1994 Gmail account.
I mean, if you're emailing them anyway, get the scoop. If you've got some connections with them, talk to them. Those are the people, right?
Yeah. So I mean, and I do have the email addresses of these people, but like it's like to expect a response. They know I'm in the room. Like I've reached out to Russ Brandon and all these people. They know I'm in the room, but like I sometimes I just send them a nice note, and I know fully that I'm not probably likely because sometimes they do likely not going to get a response. But I just find it funny. There are some passionate fans in this group. You know, I remember before the XFL came back, there were people telling me the Battlehawks weren't coming back. Mike, I talked to a guy at Foot Locker. You know, we got some, let's just say rhymes with Skirty. You know, we've had some people. I talked to a guy at Foot Locker. They're definitely everybody in the league's gonna have black and white uniforms in the XFL in 2023. I remember that one.
Everybody has player 54 uniforms.
Yeah, everybody has player 54. So we got a little bit of that wrestling element with this fan base. There's some unique birds that go the conspiracy route and come up with all kinds of, and it's even people that I'm friendly with that sometimes I gotta cringe. Government shutdowns, and
I'm the same.
Maybe Nancy Pelosi is gonna stop the Vipers.
Hey, so maybe she'll invest, right? That's what you want.
Yeah. So it's a unique. Let me just say, this space is very unique.
Yes, sir. I agree with you.
Anybody who's passionate about this, you know, you got a lot of guys out there. A lot of people putting in great work. Anthony Miller's, yourself, obviously, Greg Parks, Mark Nelson, Mark Perry, some of the people in Newsroom, James Larson, all these guys. They really care about this stuff. They're very passionate about it. We have a little bit of a fanboy element and a little bit too much of fanaticism, but you take what you can get, you know, because these leagues need all the support they can get. So you take what you can get. So, but that's kind of where we stand in this landscape. I find it's very unique, and I think it's going to change a lot and be even more unique depending on what happens here.
Agreed. Now, Brett, I seen your question and we kind of answered it earlier. I'm going to pull up Brett's question.
Sure. Let's see.
That hub teams to play in their city. So we kind of talked about this in the USFL or XFL hub system setup. Mike, you kind of said we're probably looking at a hybrid. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, like you definitely cut costs by having all the teams train together and practice together. So that could be a full season thing. We saw that in USFL in 2022 with them, everybody being in Birmingham. And then we obviously saw that with the XFL in 2023 with everybody being in Arlington. They went out to their individual. If you've got 6 hubs, right, or 7 hubs, the short end of the stick teams are the teams that don't have their own home hub site. So St. Louis, obviously, they're going to a hub. The whole idea of a hub is you share it with someone. So like, you know, like the Stallions sharing with somebody, Canton, you had 2 teams in the USFL in 2023, the Maulers and the Generals sharing that spot together, you know, Panthers sharing, all that. So if you're the short end of the stick team, you don't have a home site. You're hanging out with Birmingham and saying, hey, when you guys are not playing, we'll play here. You know, you're hanging out with the Battlehawks and, you know, you're playing in their market. So I'm hoping that it's naive of me to think that these 2 leagues that always look to save money are all of a sudden going to put 16 teams in their markets. Especially considering how both of them are not making that money like they wanted to, or didn't meet their expectations. For me to all of a sudden envision them putting all 16 teams in their markets, the hub, the way the XFL had it, they'll keep that, sure. Like all the teams training together, practicing together, all that. Although some players complain about that, the traveling back and forth, the kind of awkwardness of it. You're with your opponent on the same plane, like Ben DiNucci is hanging out with Jordan Teamo or whatever before they have to play each other. Well, it's a little weird, but it saves a lot of money. and flying out of Texas saves money. And so we'll see that. It's just a question of, are we going to have a situation where there are hub teams that are, sharing their site with another team that doesn't have a place to play? We'll see. We've still seen that in the last 2 years in the USFL. It got a little bit better in year 2. Panthers having home games, showboats, somewhat of a neutral site with Canton.
So yeah, so basically like everything else, we're just waiting for more info. We don't really know truly.
Yeah, but it's very possible. I mean, Neil Stratton came out with the hub thing, and it's definitely something that I've heard as a possibility. And it's hard for me to believe they're going to have 16 teams.
Agreed.
So I want it, but and if they're not doing that, then way to save money rather than having 14 teams, we got to pay rent for venues and everything else, is to have 7 different hubs or 6 different hubs.
It'd be cool if they had just plain sites that were, middle ground, or both teams had to travel to play in their home city. I don't know. There's a lot that could change there, but man, it's a lot. Another question: will there be a redraft if merger? That's what the rumors are saying, but I don't know truly. What do you think?
I don't like that. I don't like that idea because you've already formed identities with these teams. Like with these coaching staffs and teams, why should Skip Holtz and Zachary Potter have to all of a sudden abandon their roster and start over?
Yep.
They've done tremendous handiwork over there. Why should Von Hutchins, who's put together a great roster with the Defenders, all of a sudden have to abandon his roster? I think if we do a draft, which would be fun, if we do a draft, the XFL, see, that's the thing the XFL also has, is they have a great intel because they've run player showcases, they've had a combine, they've done things the USFL hasn't. So that would be a fun draft for Zachary Potter and all these guys, the GMs on the USFL side, to be included in on the XFL side of thing, and then have a crack at a lot of these NFL training camp cuts that are everybody be part of that pool, right? So I mean, redraft, no. I think it's a bad idea, a redraft. Unless you're starting completely fresh and there's no longer a DC Defenders team, there's no longer a Battlehawks team, no longer Stein. These teams have already established themselves. A draft with all these teams, possibly. Time frame's important with this. How long does this damn regulatory approval take? If you're playing a season in April, you could do a December or January draft. So if your training camp starts in March or something, you could do a draft with the entire league, however many teams it is, whether it's 14 or whatever. Be a little different. Like the XFL with the February timeline kind of gets a jump on all those NFL training camp cuts.
Yep.
Because a lot of those guys, they want to start playing in February. They want to have that window where they can latch on to NFL teams in May. And so they'll entertain the XFL side. Going to that league first rather than waiting to play in April. So anyhow, redraft, no. Draft could be fun. Like these teams coming into the party, like all going after the same pool of players instead of competing with each other for players like they've been doing, trying to nudge people. Like we saw Victor Bolden re-sign with the Stallions. Yep. It's interesting. He went to the XFL, got a championship ring with Bob Stoops and all that. Some of his Stallions teammates were on that team as well as coaches. So, and now he goes back to, everybody wants to play in Birmingham, so anyhow, that could be fun. We need these details so badly to start getting into all that.
Yes, sir. I really believe you need the identity of these teams to be successful. If you want to keep your fans around, regardless, nobody wants to see a scraped new league again. We've built, whether you're USFL, XFL, whatever, you have built some kind of fandom there that you can't just wipe the slate clean. That's not going to work.
They have personalities too, like the defense.
Exactly.
Greg Williams has a specific type of player he likes for his defense. So Fred Keiss, with Keiss over there with the Defenders, they have a specific style that they like, specific big play receivers, RPO, play action, Jordan Teamu. So they, their run game style with Abram Smith, they have a specific style. So now that we know what the Stallions look like, we know what Skip Holtz likes to do. So you want to see that develop. And then when you get into the draft, when you follow these teams, you know exactly what the Stallions need. You know the defenders could use some extra defensive backs. They had some trouble in the championship game. So that becomes part of the story of the draft, like who they're going to target. We know some teams like Orlando might come in looking at the quarterback position. They could be looking at a few other different spots, to improve their defense, right? So the identity is important. That's why I don't like abandoning the USFL name. I don't like abandoning the XFL name, because you've built up this identity. You're supposed to build upon it, not tear it down.
Agreed. Mike G said, disbursement draft, leave existing rosters of surviving teams alone.
That's interesting, and not impossible. We got a whole new pool of players coming in, but if, like, let's just hypothetically speaking, let's say we get the Vipers roster, a lot of good players on that group, Jeff Badets and all that. Let's say the Roughnecks are out of it. Holy cow, a lot of good players on that roster too. I got to figure out that group. And then whatever USFL teams are out of the mix. So you might have a draft of those specific players. If there are 4 teams, you might have a draft, put them in a pool, let all the teams, figure out how you want to do that, and a draft order and everything else, and let all the teams pick from those players. That's what I was talking about earlier when I spoke to a GM about how he thinks that these teams become more talented if you eliminate 2 to 4 of them. You have a deeper, richer, stronger talent pool. It's not diluted. Correct. Yeah, so that could be interesting. I'm sure a lot of people will be fighting over adding Jeff Badet or PETA or whomever, So that's that could be cool. I think if I just like believing that 2024 it's going to happen. I'm still having a hard time with.
Yeah, it's already October.
I know that's the plan, but you got to get it moving.
We got 3 months left of this year. That's crazy to think
about. It goes by fast, So it's like, it's if they're doing an on-field merger in 2024, they got a lot of work to do, a lot of heavy lifting.
All right, last question I got for you, Mike, and then we'll hop off. This one comes from Justin again. Any ideas when kickoff would be? The April kickoff schedule makes going to a game in the South a sweaty mess, and I agree to that, no doubt.
Yeah, we've had, like, for the attendance for these games, we've had every excuse in the book. And a lot of, I don't want to say excuse because a lot of this is legitimate. But, we get the, there's a new gas station opened up downtown. So that's why people didn't show up, kind of thing. But yes, in the South, boy, is it hot. I don't blame people for not wanting to, like, basically bake their kids in the stands, bring their little 5-year-olds out there to get fried. Yeah, it's weird. It's like strange. Like, some people are opponents of playing in February and March because of how cold it is in the Northeast weather. And so I think scouts, NFL teams, players, agents, they prefer the February to May timeline because of better job opportunities to latch on in National Football League. And the April to July, it's not impossible, but you do have that. There are drawbacks no matter how you can stretch it. I think my opinion is, if Fox has a lot of say-so here in terms of scheduling, I think we're going to see an April to July league.
Yep.
Maybe they start a little bit earlier in April because they've been kind of starting in the middle of April, like April 15-ish, thereabouts. So April 10th, April 12th kind of thing. Maybe they start a little bit earlier because if you got more teams now, you got more games theoretically during the season. So, it's less than ideal, but April's a possibility, especially if we're talking about 2024.
Yep.
If we're talking about 2024, April makes the most sense because it gives them more time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if we're talking about 2025, we could see a post-Super Bowl model with both leagues.
I hope so, but I don't know. What you said sounds correct. It's probably looking like a later start time, regardless of what we're thinking right now. I missed that February time, though. It was nice. You still got the winter weather. You get some of the warmer weather. It's a good little mix there. So
I like it. I know a lot of people don't like it. They think people have football fatigue and they're not going to be interested in the league. They think you're going up against March Madness, and there's never a good time to do that. And so there's always excuses. Like, I know when the USFL season started, a lot of people were like, well, now it's summertime and people are not home on the weekends on Saturday and Sundays. They're taking, they have their one day off with their family or their friends, and they're not going to just stay home and watch the Maulers and Generals get it on in Ohio. So I know there's a lot of different reasons and excuses for a lot of this stuff, but I personally prefer February through April or May. The Super Bowl's been pushed back so much now that this runs towards middle of May now. May 13th, I think, was the XFL championship game. That's a preference for me. It's also helps players latch on with NFL teams, at least get that opportunity.
Sounds good, Mike. I think that's where we're going to leave it off. It's been an hour and a half. DeMarcus, I seen your question, man. I want to talk about your topic. He wanted to talk about how playing in front of a hub crowd might affect free agency or player skill down the road, and I think that's a good topic to cover.
That's a real good, that's another thing that's not talked about enough. We talk about no home games, no road games, but also like we saw this during the 2020 season, like the 2020 NFL season, offense was up, scoring was up, all that was up. Big reason for it is now quarterbacks didn't have to deal with crowd noise. They didn't have to deal with making adjustments in the line of scrimmage. There wasn't crowd noise. So you didn't have that natural, and it's that's a testing ground. If you got quarterbacks that don't have to deal with crowd noise, don't have to deal with making adjustments and doing nothing, then that's a non-NFL experience. You're not, or non-college experience, because in college you have to deal with the crowd noise and the atmosphere.
Crazy crowds.
Crazy crowds. So that's a very good point from a football aspect. I feel bad for guys who celebrate big plays in the USFL. You hear the on the fake, but they go to the crowd and there's like nobody there to celebrate with or whatever.
Makes me sad.
It makes me sad for them, the poor guys. So it is a factor in judging these players, especially quarterbacks, because they're not having to deal with the natural elements,
pressure
situation.
Yeah,
high pressure situation of I hate to put it this way because it was part of the ad campaign, a real football game.
He said that's trademark, sir.
Yeah. So a real football game, you have to deal with that. So that's kind of the story there.
Yeah.
I know I don't frequent these places, but I know that if they're listening, if they care to listen, the Discords, the Reddits, the message boards, all that, when they hear stuff like that, they automatically get angry.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, but I didn't start it with the real football stuff. Real football is played in front of like real fans, like real people.
I cruise the message boards myself, but post rarely.
I'm a message board baby. So yeah. I started out in this whole thing because of XFLboard.com. I was one of the guys who frequented, and for a long time I frequented that message board, even when I was writing about the league and all that, but I had to stop doing that because I started getting myself in trouble. Because when you get into conversations, you can't help, especially arguments, you can't help but letting people know what you know. Like, wait a minute, pal, you don't know what you're talking about here because X, Y, and Z coach told me this. I have this specific DM from this player who told me such and such. You're tempted to let people know what you know. So I'm a fan of these message boards in existence, but I don't. People tell me all the time, like, I'm like demonized in certain parts of the, like little communities that have like 41 people there. So that I'm demonized as some kind of Jerry Cardinal's my uncle, so kind of thing or whatever.
He's a plug. He's an insider plug. Yeah,
He's a fan. He's a jerk because he doesn't admit that he's a fan of the Vipers or the Guardians. I was ripping on I got so much heat for being so mean to the Orlando Guardians during the season. So anyhow, but maybe that's biased because I was upset about the New York Guardians not returning. But anyhow, I think it's a fun topic, and people come up with good stuff. That I'm forgetting the name of the individual who just brought up the whole game atmosphere, players having to deal with crowd noise.
He's one of the contributors for the podcast.
That's the kind of thing that I love on message boards, because smart guys like that, smart people like that come up with stuff like that, and then agree. That's a good one. That's stuff that's an obvious thing that a lot of people don't bring up. Not the usual conspiracy theory, Danny Garcia's email doesn't work. She's left the league. She's upset. Moose has fired her. Dwayne Johnson.
Shots fired.
Dwayne Johnson punched Eric Shanks in the face. He's not going to be allowed on SmackDown anymore. So
it's a conspiracy, Mike. Leave it alone.
Yeah, so, what was the last conspiracy we had on here like a couple weeks ago? That kidnapping trial where the ladies claiming every celebrity in Hollywood just kidnapped her.
I mean, like I do, though, unless you have I don't know, you've got to ignore most of this crap coming out.
I don't pay attention to it.
You got to.
I know if I
have blinders.
I know if I walked into one of these message boards or Discords or Reddits, my nature is I would try to befriend people and try to understand their arguments and all that, but it would end up with me policing them and correcting people left and right.
Yeah, you can't correct trolls. You can try, but they're going to troll you.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's so there's just so much misinformation out there. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then there's tribalism, which I think is like funny that these leagues have that they have passionate pockets of fans that are like, you wave the flag for that's cool. That's what these need, because you really, in the grand scheme of football, these leagues, they mean a lot to the players and the coaches, but in the grand scheme, they're barely a blip on the radar. So the XFL and the USFL, when it comes to casual mainstream football fans, they're barely a blip on the radar. I'm sorry. And this is coming from somebody who's an advocate of these leagues. That's good. That you'll know when these leagues will make it long term, when that changes, when they're not just an afterthought, or why are they still here, or who cares if they're merging? Now it's one less league to care about or notice or pay attention to. So there's a lot of that stuff. So any of the Discords or Reddits or whatever that hate my guts for no reason, with no proof or no validity or no receipts, nothing, zero, zilch, or crap on all my information, but herald it if someone else says the same exact thing.
Yeah, they just quote it, and it's
just quote it. It's like, oh, Mike Mitchell's making it up, and then the next individual that comes out and says, hey, new league name. Oh, what a brilliant stroke. So what journalism. So I wonder where they got that from. So anyhow, so I thank you for having me on, Matthew. I'm partially disappointed that I didn't have more to give you here.
Hey man, good productive conversation. Yeah. I don't get you on here to drop bombs and
I'm hoping, like, I want to come on here and
statement possible, it's good we can have this conversation. And
the people who are listening to this or watching this or whatever, they are the diest of the diehards,
Agreed.
like they're clamoring for this information. So I really feel disappointed I'm not coming on here going, sorry, Blevins is out, he's going to the Giants again or whatever. So like I wish I had that information for you guys. I'm working on it.
And that's what matters. I mean, we appreciate what you do, man.
I know what I'm telling you. I'm telling you all the information that I get from people within the leagues. There's messages right now that I'm like staring at to the left of my phone that I have from people within the league. Another one there. So, but I'm giving you information that I can best as I can without revealing actual people's names and all that. And the fun part about this story, or maybe the aggravating part of it, is that so many people that are in the leagues are not in the know.
That's the worst part.
So they're truly in the dark.
That's their job. And whether you're playing or working, I mean, that's your profession. You're probably concerned.
Yeah. A lot of these assistants are very worried, especially the guys who are going to be laid off. A lot of these assistants on the XFL side, they're supposed to go through like this furlough process, file for unemployment, wait until, they're back on the job before they get notified about coming back on. And it's kind of ridiculous that it can happen to special teams coordinators. Like, they're not protected in this. It shouldn't happen to any coaches, mind you, but like the special teams coordinators don't get paid the same. They get paid like a regular in the XFL. They get paid like the standard assistant salary.
Understood.
The offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators make more than the assistants. That's a tough one. I had so many coordinators like who've contacted me during these merger talks and said, hey, is my contract cool? Are they going to change this? And I was like, no, you know your own contract. Like, you should be fine. It's 2 years, right? So merge or no merge, you should be good with that. So I just have a funny feeling, Matthew, and this will probably age poorly. I have a feeling this might not go down. Just something doesn't feel something's wrong, and I don't know how that's saying going in Denmark. I don't know, but something feels a slightly. I'd probably be completely wrong, and they have a fully detailed plan, 14 teams, and this, that, and the other. And but something feels like there could, and I think the fact that they put those cautionary statements out there, the way it was worded, makes me think that maybe they think there's a chance. Even the USFL, their message to the players, message to the coaches, we're still moving on. We got everything planned for year 3 or season. We're still pushing forward. Don't worry, we got the season. Even if this doesn't pass, we're ready to go. So we'll see. Intent to merger. It's not quite merger. Intent is different, and cautionary statements about approval is different too. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. The second sentence of the USFL statement. Subject to customary regulatory approvals and the transaction is consummated, the league will establish best-in-class operations based on the most recent seasons of both leagues. That can be taken a few different ways, in my opinion. It just depends on how you really want to look at it and what occurs. So,
and the tribalism, the tribalism that exists in this space, it also exists within the leagues. I've had people reach out to me on the USFL side that'll say, "Hey, Mike, our financial model is better." And then you should follow us. Moose has got to run this whole thing. Get rid of that stupid XFL kickoff. And then I've got people reach out to me XFL side saying, "Oh man, we had a better TV product than them. We have more fans at games. We made more money on merchandise and revenue. We have more football players, 68 of them, and they're signed with the NFL. They had 41. We prove we're the better product. They need to get on our wagon." So and follow what we do and follow our calendar and all that. So there's a little bit of that. I look forward, if there's a genuine merger, that's a good one. I look forward to the possibility of like natural rivalry, like USFL champion versus XFL champion.
It'd be awesome.
You can still do the whole tribalism. Oh, the Stallions are going to kill the Battlehawks. Wait till you see the USFL's better. We were 5-3 in conference play and interconference games. We proved the USFL's a better league. So that's more fun if it's actually going on the field. I don't mind that, like kind of trash talking, rather that than the conspiracy stuff. So yeah, so it should be interesting where this all shakes out. Hopefully we get answers. I'm working on it. Hopefully we get answers and information leak out before everything is completed.
Well, Mike, I guess we're going to wrap it. It's been an hour and 38. So
wait, it's always long. Sorry.
It goes quick, man. I know me and you usually go 2 hours at least. So I appreciate you again, dude. And
I appreciate people listening to this, checking it out. Then thanks for having me on. I wish Pat was on with us, but maybe another time.
Yes, sir. Me as well. And Mike, stay in touch, man. Anything you need, just let me know. If we need to have a quick run through, quick stream, just let me know. We'll make it happen. All right.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Keep up the great work.
I appreciate you. I've got your information down there. I'll post it all for people to find easily. No need in saying it. I'll have it ready for everyone. So I appreciate you, dude.
Thank you.
All right. Gonna wrap it up. So this was the first 10 a.m. session I've had, and I enjoyed it. It was nice. I feel like we got a little different of a crew watching than the normal nighttime active crew. So cool with me. As always, thanks to the XFL and XFLboard.com. Appreciate you letting me cover the league. I enjoy it greatly, and I hope to continue doing it regardless of this merger or change. We're going to expand. We've got some things in the works right now. As I've said numerous times, I enjoy the full aspect of the alternative football leagues, not just USFL, XFL, there's a whole broad spectrum of stuff going on that we can keep up with. But yeah, I appreciate everyone listening, watching today, commenting. If you have any feedback or you got any suggestions or requests, just shoot me a message, or XFL Mike G. Either one, we'll get it that way. DeMarcus, I've seen your stuff, and I want to talk about that topic more, but I want to wait until more details come out, and we'll get somebody else on here that is an expert or close to you, as close as possible to an expert, to discuss all the merger talk some more. Mike's been on here for a while, so. But anyway, appreciate you guys as always. It's always fun. It's always an adventure, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Got Nathan Karstens on. He plays for the Slam Ball Slashers. They had a successful season last year, or I guess this year it would be last season. But great guy. He's got some good things going. Former football player. He's still trying to play football. He's an athlete. So we'll have him on tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Central. So check that out. And the schedule should be released now. I may add some dates depending on what happens. Sometimes we'll just throw some stuff on there and get rolling with it if some news drops. So just stay updated. Appreciate you guys listening. Like always, we are small, but we are mighty here. We have a voice. So I appreciate you all again. Hope you have a great day and night. And we will see you next time. Peace out.